Happy Sabbath, boys and girls. Here we are back in the desert. Are you ready to learn about another special desert creature? I know I am. We're going to start off with our lesson story with teacher Kathy, and then we will find out about a special creature that Jesus made.
Good morning, boys and girls. Our lesson today is called Promises Are for Keeping. Let's see what that means. King David looked up in the blue, blue sky. The king was remembering his youth. He thought about the days that he had spent taking care of his father's sheep. His father's sheep. He remembered the special day that the prophet Samuel had come and poured olive oil on his head and God told him that David was going to be the next king. He also remembered the days in the palace with King Saul. He lived in the palace with King Saul for a little while. Then David thought about Jonathan, his very best friend. David sighed. Jonathan had died as a soldier in battle. David missed him. He remembered how they used to gallop their horses, how they used to shoot their arrows, how they had promised to be friends forever. Then he remembered that he had made a promise to Jonathan's family. Suddenly, David had a new thought. I wonder if there's anybody from Jonathan's family that's still alive. King David sent for Ziba, who had been a servant in King Saul's house. Ziba ran to the palace and bowed before the king. Is there anyone from Saul's family that's still alive? King David asked Ziba. If there is, I want to show them God's kindness. Yes, Ziba answered, one of Jonathan's sons is alive. Mephibosheth, that's a hard name, Mephibosheth. He's crippled. He was hurt as a child, and he's crippled in both of his feet. King David smiled. I want to see him. So the king sent servants to bring Mephibosheth to the palace. Oh, Mephibosheth was so nervous, his stomach began to hurt when he heard that King David wanted to see him. He knew that his grandfather, King Saul, had treated David very badly. Why did King David want him to go to the palace? Was the king going to hurt him? He knew he couldn't say no, but he didn't want to see King David. When Mephibosheth arrived at the palace, he bowed very low before King David. I am your servant, he said. Don't be afraid, David said kindly. Your father Jonathan was my best friend. That's the reason I wanted you to come here. I am giving you all the land that once belonged to your grandfather Saul, and I want you to live here in the palace with me. Mephibosheth's mouth dropped open with surprise. Why do you want to do these nice things for me? Because I loved your father very much, the king answered, and I promised him that I would take care of his family, and a promise is a promise. So it was that Mephibosheth moved into the palace. David always treated Mephibosheth as if he was his own son, and David and Mephibosheth soon became good friends too. Our memory verse today is, we have promised by the Lord that we will be friends. 1 Samuel 20, verse 42. So get your hands ready. Let's see if we can do this in sign language. We're going to say we have promised by the Lord that we will be friends. Let's do that one more time. We have promised by the Lord that we will be friends. See you next week for another story.
All right, boys and girls, are you ready? Ready to learn about a special creature that Jesus made that lives here in the desert? Oh, we are going to be talking about the rattlesnake today. Have any of you seen a rattlesnake in the wild? We don't see them very often, but I think a couple of our friends are here that can help us. I'm going to call them. Ralph and Randy, are you here?
Good morning, boys and girls.
Good morning, children.
Oh, I'm glad that you're here today.
We are very lucky. We have Ralph to help us learn about rattlesnakes.
And I am so glad that I can help.
Me too. I know you have so much to tell the boys and girls.
Yes, I do. The rattlesnake is misunderstood. We are actually very shy.
Shy?
Yes, we don't like people and would rather run away than to bite someone. We only bite when we feel cornered or trapped. People actually really taste bad.
What if someone traps you and they don't know it?
Well, God thought of that. He gave me a way to warn people when they're getting too close and I'm feeling trapped.
Really? How is that?
Well, God gave me a rattle. When I feel trapped, I will coil up and I'll start rattling my tail. And the noise alerts people that I'm around.
I'm going to shake your tail right now. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, listen, boys and girls. Huh, I like the sound of your rattle. Would you like me to show the kids a picture of a rattlesnake?
I would.
All right, kids, let's come over here. Here is a picture of a rattlesnake that's coiled up, and you can see the rattles on his tail. Rattlesnakes are usually brown and black like this one.
Every time I shed my skin, part of my skin stays on the tip of my tail and it forms a rattle. So I wiggle and wiggle the end of my tail and you can hear me.
Huh.
That is why they call you a rattlesnake.
Yep.
What happens if you have to bite someone?
Well, it's not good. Remember, I said that people don't taste very good. But if I do have to bite someone, you have to see a doctor right away. They will give you a shot to counter-react the poison I've injected with my fangs.
All right, we have to be careful around rattlesnakes, don't we, kids?
Where can we find rattlesnakes?
We are found in southwestern United States, from the Pacific Ocean all the way to the mountains.
I have a question now that I'm dying to ask.
What's that?
Why are you always on rocks?
Well, I'm cold-blooded.
What does that mean?
That means that my body doesn't generate heat. I get warm from the sun. So when the sun shines down on the rocks, it warms the rocks up, and then I lay on them. And it feels so nice. I love to just lay around soaking up the sun and getting warm.
look like?
Well, I'm tan. I also range from brown to grayish or greenish tones. I blend in very well on rocks and the sands of the desert.
Boys and girls, do you remember what it's called when an animal blends in with its surroundings? That's right, it's called camouflage. And the rattlesnake will blend in with the sand and the rocks that it is around.
Do you get very big?
Rattlesnakes come in very many different sizes. The Pacific rattler is up to 5 feet long.
Whoa!
And the Western diamondback can even get 7 feet in length. And the sidewinder rattlesnake will only grow 18 to 32 inches.
I have pictures of some of those rattlesnakes. Should we show the kids how big they can get?
I think so.
Okay, let's come over here and let me get out my tape measure. This first picture right here, this one is on a rock and it blends right in. Do you see the mosses on the rock? And the rattlesnake blends in. That's called a Pacific rattler, and it can grow up to 4 feet long. This one's coiled up, but when they're stretched out, the Pacific rattlesnake can get to be 4 feet long. Let's look at our next one. This one, also on the sand, and it blends in. He's kind of curled up. See his rattles there? This one is called a Western diamondback. And this rattlesnake can get even longer. It can get up to 7 feet long. There's 5, 6, 7 feet. That's a long snake, isn't it? And this last one is called a sidewinder. There are many different kinds of rattlesnakes, and the sidewinder gets to be about 32 inches. So it's a shorter snake here. It's about that long.
Man, the Western diamondback is huge!
Yes, it is. And it is the most aggressive rattlesnake. It will coil up, rattle its tail, and stand its ground when it feels threatened. It bites hundreds of people a year, more than any other venomous snake in the United States.
What kind of food do rattlesnakes like to eat?
We eat lizards and small rodents such as ground squirrels, small rabbits, rats, and mice.
And when do you hunt?
Most rattlesnakes hunt at nighttime. After we eat, we lay around and we don't do anything for days at a time. We let the food in our stomach digest.
You mean you don't eat every day?
Nope. After eating, we can go several weeks before we eat again.
Wow!
Did you know, boys and girls, that the rattlesnake hunts at night? Do you remember what that's called? That is a nocturnal animal, isn't it? Because Ralph here likes to hunt at night.
What happens if you break one of your fangs?
Well, I have reserve fangs to replace any if they fall off.
Cool! I hear that some snakes lay eggs and some give birth to live babies. What does a rattlesnake do?
A female will lay eggs. However, they're kept in the mother's body until they're hatched. And then the young are born alive. The female has 9 or 10 babies.
And the babies are very small. When a baby rattler is born, they're only about 6 inches long, 6 to 12 inches long. So they look just like their mom, but they're a lot smaller.
Are the babies poisonous like the mother rattlesnake?
Rattler babies have venom and short fangs and are dangerous from birth. Although they can't make a rattling sound with their tail, the little guys will throw themselves into a defensive pose and strike repeatedly when they're disturbed or feel threatened.
Well, when does the baby rattlesnake get their rattles?
The first time time they shed their skin, they get their first rattle. And with each skin shedding, or molting, a new rattle appears. The first year a baby can shed its skin 2 or 3 times.
Huh. I've always heard that you can tell how old a rattlesnake is by how many rattles they have.
The number of rattles is not a true indicator of age. Every time a snake molts its skin, it produces a new rattle. If a year has a great supply of food, a rattlesnake will grow faster, and this results in more molting or shedding. Also, rattles wear out or they break off. So it is unusual to find an adult snake with more than 8 or 10 rattles.
Well, how old can a rattlesnake get?
In a zoo, rattlesnakes can live longer than 15 years.
Well, what do you do in the winter?
We all gather during the fall in crevices in rocky ledges to hibernate for the winter. We return to these dens year after year. When temperatures begin to warm in May and in early June, we come out of hibernation. We remain near the entrance of our little home for a few days, laying in the sun, and then we make our way to where we'll spend the summertime.
I have a picture of a whole group of rattlesnakes spending the time in the winter. Look at this. The rattlesnakes gather together and they spend the winter together where they hibernate. And let's go back one picture and let's look at what a rattlesnake's tail looks like. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rattles. So that means that this rattlesnake molted 9 times.
I've heard a sidewinder makes a funny mark in the sand when it crawls.
Yes, it does. Teacher, do you have a picture of a sidewinder going across the desert?
I do. This is a sidewinder rattlesnake, and do you see the funny tracks that it made in the sand?
The sand gets so hot that the sidewinder only lets a few of its scales touch the hot sand at a time.
That's right.
Are there any enemies to the rattlesnake?
Well, young rattlesnakes come under attack often. They might even become a meal for an eagle, a hawk, a road runner, or a wild turkey. For the king snake or the whip snake, they could become a meal for a coyote, a fox, a badger, or a hog.
It sounds like even rattlesnakes need to hide sometimes.
That's true.
Yep, we do a lot of hiding. Like I said at the beginning, we really are shy creatures. If you leave us alone and respect us, we will leave you alone and try to get away when we hear you coming.
Well, very interesting. And you give a warning, don't you, when somebody gets close to you by shaking your tail?
Yep.
Well, I'm so glad you were both here today and you've helped us learn a lot about the rattlesnakes.
I am so happy to be here. I think I'm gonna go lay in the sun. It's getting kind of cold here. Goodbye, boys and girls.
Goodbye. See you next week.
All right. Bye, Ralph. Bye, Randy. All right, I'm glad that our friends were here. They sure had a lot to say this morning, but we learned a lot about rattlesnakes, didn't we? All right, shall we thank Jesus for the Bible story and for the rattlesnake this morning? Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for the Bible story that we learned today. And we want to remember King David and how he kept his promise to his best friend Jonathan, and he looked out for Jonathan's son. And we also want to thank you for the rattlesnake that you made, and you gave it a special warning system so that if we get too close, we can listen for the rattles and we can back up and stay away. Thank you for everything you've given us, Jesus, and thank you for the Sabbath. Amen. Now remember, we're here at 10 o'clock and at 11 o'clock. And we're at the windows at 10:30 if you want to stop by and pick up a craft. See you later.